Now, the unfortunate truth is that people read books by the cover, and they're going to do the same thing with businesses. So it's imperative that your brand design and style matches the message you want to deliver, and it embodies the services that you're going to provide. With that being said, there are a few elements that we're going to be designing throughout this module here, so let me run over them real quick. First, we're going to talk about the colors of your business. Selecting your primary, secondary, accent, and 2 base colors will give you endless options to be able to express your creativity. We're going to move on from there to fonts and selecting a header font and a body font. From there, we're going to then decide on the type of iconography, the little elements and the flares of your website and social media posts. We're going to transition to photography and videography and make sure that we're establishing an overall image that we want to embody for the business. And last but not least, we're going to talk about building your logo, the do's, the do nots, the important mistakes that I've personally made in the past, and things that you want to consider when creating your own logo. Now, for the business owners out there who already have fonts and colors and all of their logos built, you can skip this, but I do recommend still watching it because there may be a few elements that you'll pick up on that could greatly help you in the future. Throughout this module, I'm going to be sharing my screen, giving you all sorts of different options. As I mentioned before, this section and this topic is very subjective. One person likes one font while the other person absolutely despises it. It's up to you on whether or not you want to get other individuals' input on this. Keep in mind that this is your business and it needs to embody your personal vision and mission and core values that we discussed in previous modules. So without further ado, let me share my screen and let's jump into building those brand colors. As you can see here on my screen, I've pulled up one of my top favorite color generators online. You can find this exact link down below with all of the other links that I'm going to be talking about throughout this module. Feel free to use whatever color generator you want. However, this one is really great because it not only gives you the name of the color, but it also gives you the hex code. Hex codes are so important because every screen and every little device has slightly different color variations, and it's important that you stay consistent with your color style throughout. There are brands out there who have literally patented colors for their businesses, like Christian Louboutin's red, and same with Ferrari's red as well. Those colors no one else in the industry is allowed to use, and it's a specific hex code. As we work through this section, you're going to ultimately get multiple different hex codes, and you're going to want to copy and paste those codes into a notes folder or a Google Doc or a Word doc for safekeeping and to reference when you start creating content in the future. Okay, I've talked way too much about this topic. Let's jump into the color generator and let me show you how fun it is to select your brand colors. So the first thing you need to do is just click Start the Generator. What this will do is populate 5 different colors. Now, if you remember what I said earlier, we're going to be selecting a primary, a secondary, an accent, and 2 bases. Now, the primary and secondary colors are going to be the bold colors on the website that really embody the brand. Now, you can choose 2 colors that are similar, or you can choose 2 colors that complement each other. The accent color is the eye-popping color that you're going to use for your buttons and your call to action. This is going to be very much so the opposite of your primary and secondary color because you want it to pop off the screen really aggressively. And then, of course, your base colors are going to be generally the same throughout most businesses, but you can get creative if you really feel the need to. But it's going to be gray, white, black. Sometimes people go with a dark blue or a dark green. These colors are very much so muted. They're not distracting, and they really just kind of blend into the background. Now, all you have to do is hit the space bar, and all of these colors are going to change. Once you find a color that you like, you're going to want to lock it in. And in this case, I really like this turquoise blue here. So you can see there are all these buttons here. We're going to go down to the bottom and click the lock button. I'm coming up with my own brand colors here, but I want to make this my primary color. I'm going to click this and drag this over to my first column because I want this my absolute first primary color. Now, what's super cool about this generator is now that I've locked this color in, all of these colors are now going to be complementary to that color. So you can see I'm clicking through and I actually like this dark green too. Black is just going to be an easy color to stick with on the background, so I'm going to drag that one over here. I almost like this parchment as well. I'm going to lock that one in, and we'll have both my base 1 and my base 2, and we're going to go with more of a parchment color rather than a straight white. I'm not completely sold on this green. It's a little too dark in contrast to my primary. And I feel like it's going to be competing, not necessarily complementary. So I'm going to keep going here. So I think I want to go with the grayer color. So I think I found my secondary color that I want to lock in, and that's going to be this rose color. So we're going to lock that in. Now, what we're going to be focusing on now is that accent color. We've got our primary colors. They're muted, not too aggressive, but they're good, clean primary colors. We've got our base colors. In the middle, I like to stick with accent, and we want something that's extremely bright, extremely popping off and completely different from the primary and secondary colors. This pink is somewhat good, but it's too close to this rose color, I think, that it will not pop off of the page. This orange would look good. Let's go with this one. I like this Pantone color, this orange color. This one's really vibrant. So this color, if I were to layer or have a button on my website or on a piece of content that I was creating, and that button was orange and the background was this blue, you can see that that orange just pops off of that blue. And the same goes for this red. So this is going to be my example product here of building a color palette. Once you have your colors selected, you're going to want to open up a notes folder or a Google Doc like I mentioned, and these numbers right here, the 61988E, these are your hex numbers. And you can see here there is a hashtag right below it. Once you have your colors selected, you're going to want to save the hex codes, and I always recommend taking a screenshot so you can see all of the colors side by side. So in this case, I'm going to trigger a screenshot. We're going to copy or select this area, and I know you can't really see it, but you can see my mouse is selecting that screenshot. So we've got that screenshot available now. Now what we want to do is copy and paste all of those hex codes. Now the hex codes are these numbers right here. So I'll open up another window with my notes, and I'm going to come over here and copy and paste this number right here. It's always easy to recognize a hex code because they've got a hashtag in front of it. So in this case, this is that blue hex code. We come over to the rose one right here, and you can see here is that hex code. Come over to the orange, and this is that hex code. So you want to copy this. And what I would recommend doing too is when you go to drop it in your notes folder, you're going to state something like that. Whoops, spelled that wrong. So it'll be your blue color primary, and you can even go as far as saying Zomb, because that's the color of that one. And then you can copy and paste that and save it for reference. Now, because colors can be such a finicky, subjective thing, I want to do one more color palette and walk you through some of my thoughts as I select different colors. And I'm going to go for a completely different palette here. If you already have your colors selected, feel free to skip forward in the video. Otherwise, stick around with me here, and we're going to do one more color palette. So here again, I've gone through and unlocked all of those palettes here and all of those color columns, and we can hit the space bar and start blowing through different colors. Now the first color palette that I selected, I went with more of a blue theme. That's one of my favorite colors, so of course that's going to be my go-to. For this one, I want to go for more of a lighter colored theme. So we're going to go for all light colors across the board. I like this peach yellow. This is an interesting color. I may change that later here, but let's just go through and see what colors we have and are presented with. And you can see here, since we've selected a bright color, they're going to say, hey, you should have a complementary color that's really dark. And that's where things can get a little dicey here. I like this one. This one is decent here. A nice pink lavender. Easy colors to go with, easy on the eyes. Oh, I really like this. Is it Polynesian blue? Let's lock that in for the accent. And you know what? Realistically, I'm just going to go with whites here. So a white color is going to be all Fs. Hit F quite a few times, and that will be your white. And then your black, as you saw, is just going to be all zeros. So let's just stick with that. It's an easy color palette. We've got our base, white and black. We've got our accent color, which is that sharp blue, that deep blue. And then our primary and secondary colors are really light and easy on the eyes, not super distracting, but really complement each other. An important question you should ask yourself as you start to build this palette is, do these colors add or subtract from the content on your website? If a color is so vibrant and so distracting that that's where your eye will naturally go to, you could argue that it's a negative for your website or the content you're creating, because people are then all of a sudden distracted and they're not looking at the content that they should be looking at. Vice versa, if you've got too light of colors and the content just blends in with it, people may look at it and think that the brand is too bland, that there's not much flair to it, and they'll move on. Now, before we move on to fonts, I want to show you one more thing that's really important to recognize. And that is that colors have different emotions involved in them. So here I've pulled up a color wheel with emotions. Now you can find all sorts of different variations out there online. In this case, this one is a color wheel, but as you go through, you can see that yellow really represents positivity, sunlight, creativity. Purple really represents luxury, quality, creativity. Brown is calm, reliable. There's a nature presence to it. Black can be glamour. It can be sophisticated. I don't know if I can read upside down here. White is purity, it's light, it's simplicity. Green is going to be economical. Green can also emphasize money. It depends on the shade of green that you're using. Let me crane my neck here. Blue is going to be efficiency. It's going to be professional. Pink is femininity and sympathy. Orange is excitement, warmth, and love. So you can see here that colors embody different emotions. And it's important when selecting a color that you make sure that it aligns with the same message that you want to embody as well. Keep in mind that colors can also have negative feelings. So on this color wheel, you can see there's positive and negative attributes to each color. While it's not common for people to associate a color to a negative thing, it can happen in some cases, and it's important to be mindful of. Now that you locked in the colors, let's talk about fonts. Fonts can be tricky and fun, and it's important to recognize that fonts also carry different emotional feelings. That being said, fonts can also be very subjective, so it's important that you take a step back, look at the mission and vision and the core values that you established in the previous module, and really lean into that to understand what type of message you want to portray. So let's jump over to my screen, and I'm going to show you the basics and the fundamentals of fonts, and then we're going to look at comparing fonts side by side and ultimately selecting your header and body font. So here you can see there are a few different variations of fonts. Now, these are going to be your absolute fundamental core style fonts. Now here you can see there are 6 fundamental styles of fonts. Of course, once you start Googling, there are millions of fonts out there, and some people will combine serifs with slabs or displays, or sans serif with handwritten content. It can get a little dicey out there. So it's important to recognize the fundamentals and the basics. That way, when you go and look for a font, you can find something that's complementary, not something that is opposite. So let's start off at the top left and talk about sans serif fonts. In this case, sans serif is easier to understand if you compare it with the serif font. And that's because a serif font has these little notches at the end of the fonts, whereas a sans serif does not. Sans serif generally will have fonts that are equal in size throughout, but it can vary. In some cases here, this serif has side that's not as thick as this side, but you could have the lack of sans serif. You could have no serifs here, and it would be considered a sans serif. Next, you've got handwritten. This can also be considered script or calligraphy. Handwritten is a little bit more playful. It can be more fun and exciting, whereas calligraphy can be very much so professional or luxury, or this feeling of prestige behind it. Display are going to be fonts that are very abstract and wacky. In this case, this one is a little bit more bubbly. You could have fonts that are more medieval. You could have fonts that are more futuristic and robotic. You could have fonts that are sharp, or kind of like a gory horror theme font. And lastly, you've got monospace fonts. These are a little bit more unique, and it takes a lot more letters in a row to actually recognize the differences. But what it is every letter in a monospaced font is the exact same width. So if you're wanting to have a specific paragraph that's exactly the same width with the same amount of letters in it, a monospace font is something you're going to want to look at. This little image does not do it justice. Like I said, you usually want to have multiple different letters in a row to actually recognize the difference. But in this case, it has to be up there because it's considered one of the fundamentals. Now, a few other fonts that I want to mention that are not up here are Slab and Slab Serif. Now, slab fonts are going to be similar to sans serif with where the font itself is very thick lettering. And slab serif is very thick lettering with a serif. You can also have calligraphy. Like I mentioned, it's similar to script, but some people consider them different. So it's always worth mentioning. And there's always a random one out there where it's a calligraphic serif font. You usually start to see combinations of different fonts as you explore the different types out there. So as I mentioned before, it's important to understand the fundamentals so that you can recognize, oh, this font is a serif or this one is a sans serif. So I need to complement it with either the same or something slightly different, but isn't distracting and taking away from the content of the page. Okay, so let's move on to some of the other tabs that I've pulled up with some fonts. As I mentioned previously, all of the links that we're going to be going through are going to be below. So feel free to pull it up yourself and go through it with me, or you can watch the video and afterwards you can go in and find types of fonts that you want to use. This website is called Logo AI. It's really just a great website to take a look at the different types of fonts throughout that are available that you can really use to add to your logos or add to your website. There's not much to do on a page like this except for find inspiration or find a font that you like and build off of it. So in this case, I want you to have this as a reference, but we're going to move on to the next tab. This next tab is fonts in use. Now this one's really unique and fun and interesting to go through. These are fonts literally in use throughout different scenarios. So if I were to go to like diatype here, so you can see in this font, diatype, here is the font style. If I were to zoom in here, and if we scroll down, you can see that that font is being used in different print media or different images. It's used in different digital designs, as you can see here with product sales. Let's go back and select a different one here. So let's go with this Hercules font. This one looks really unique. You can see here is that font, and as we scroll down, you can see that font being used in other areas. In this case, for this record. We'll go back and find another one here. Here's New Helvetica, a very common font that you will really likely see throughout different websites. Chicago 5 News uses this one. So you can see here, this is that Helvetica, New Helvetica. The goal of this site, again, is just to see fonts in use and put to use on in different ways through either print media or digital media. In this case, you can see the font is being used right here. Moving on to the next tab here, this is type.io. This is fonts that go together. Now, fonts can be complementary, and it's important to choose a font that is complementary to each other. In this case, we want to go for a headline font and a body font. In this case, they went with a sans serif slab style font, and they went with a sans serif font that's thinner below. So complementary. This is going to be your header font, and this is going to be your body font. We come down here and we've got this serif font. You can see there are these little notches, and they actually complemented it with a sans serif font that's easy and simple to read in contrast. So a more professional looking serif font up here with that sans serif font down here, it really makes it easy to read and it balances. There's a complementary aspect to going with a serif and a sans serif font. As we come down here, this is another sans serif slab style font with a sans serif font that's thinner. This is a very common complementary combination you see. Let's see if we can find something that's a little bit more calligraphic or display style. Slab sans serifs. Here's a display style where the inside is actually hollowed out. This is considered display font because this is not a standard font. Now you can even see that it's display too because the M points go above the I here and above the P. The E is a little bit shorter than the P. So there's a unique kind of playfulness to the font that really embodies a different feeling than just a standard text like sans serif or serif. Now you never want to use display fonts for the body copy because you want the body copy to be easily legible and readable. In this case, they went with that display font as their header, and they went with a sans serif font for the body copy, something that's easily read and easily to recognize. Now in this case, this is considered monoscript text. So you can see all of the letters are capitalized and all of the letters are exactly the same width through and through. The I is the same distance between the V and the S. So everything is very clean and simple through and through. Now the last thing I want to do here before we close out the fonts topic is to talk about web safe fonts. This can be quite frustrating, frankly, because there's so many different devices out there, whether you're looking at a website on a tablet or a phone or a computer, whether it's Apple or PC or Windows or Linux, different computers, different browsers from Firefox, Safari, Chrome, Windows Explorer. Everyone has different code that they use to pull up web pages. And there is a very fine limit of web-safe fonts that don't require extra load time, sometimes won't even load certain fonts because the browser is not going to work with it. Now, it might be in your best interest to go with the web-safe font for your website, and when it comes to your creative content that you post on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, those documents, that creative design can have variations with the fonts that really embody the brand. But for the sake of making sure that your website loads properly on all different browsers and OS platforms, it will probably be in your best interest to select a web-safe font and then choose your creative fonts for something else. And in this case, this tab here has all of the different web-safe fonts that you can scroll through and look at. Here are your serif fonts. Above, you have the sans serif fonts. Down here, you've got your monospace fonts. You've got your cursive or calligraphy fonts. This is going to be your basic of your basic fonts, but something that you may want to lean on because of security and safety. Okay, let's move on and talk about the next section, icons. Icons are really fun. They can add flair to your website. They can add flair to your creative content, but it's not necessary. Icons can range widely as well, from little scribbles to clip art to actual professional looking mini images. So it's important to establish the type of icons that you want to incorporate in your business, or you can just scratch that out completely and say, I don't want to use icons throughout my business. Let me share my screen real quick and go through some options so you can see the differences. And again, it's important to just establish what type of icons you want to use in your brand guideline, and then you can move on. So here is one style of icon that you can choose from. I call these cutout icons because there's a color behind it, and the image is almost cut out of that color. You can see here that this human head was cut out, this globe was cut out. These icons are a great option to use if you like that style, but the one downside of icons like this is that you always have to have color or some sort of background image to imprint the type of icon you want, and this can really be distracting because there are multiple different colors on your page. Moving over to these types of fonts, these are really, really thin-lined or single-lined icons. As you can see here, here's a download link, here's a home link, plus, checkmark, X. These are really great icons to incorporate on the website if you're going for a modern, sleek, sophisticated look. They can be overused in a lot of cases, so it's imperative that you use precaution as you start to add this to your website. But these are great icon options. Moving over here, these are little clip art, kind of hand-drawn icons. There is color to these ones. I've seen these icons without color as well, something you can always consider, but there's a little bit more playfulness to this. I mean, look at this little guy. He is definitely a more playful individual than just a standard stick figure. Now, this website is called Storyblocks. I absolutely love it. I use it for stock media like videos and stock photos, as well as After Effects and Premiere Pro templates. And they even have plenty of iconography objects that you can download. In this case, this is a huge package. I'll press play, and these are video icons. So if you're going to add video to your website, you're going to want to potentially look at icon packages like this to add flair to your content, to make it a little bit more engaging and to add emphasis to certain words. If you're talking about doing a presentation, and you can have a little icon like this that pops up. If you say schedule a call with your final call to action, you could have a calendar icon pop up. I have a few other examples here on Storyblocks. This is a more three-dimensional icon style. These, again, are packages. You can come in and download them. There is one thing I want to point out, and that this is an After Effects template, so you do need to have Adobe After Effects in order to create this content and create these icons. In this case, this package set here, they all come in SPV files, so they're vectored without a background, and you can just drag and drop those icons onto your video content. Here's another template. This is an After Effects template. This is an ecology style little icons that you can download and use. But again, you have to have Adobe After Effects experience This one, I believe here, these again, that's the alpha channels. But if we go through here, you can see all sorts of different icons. I just chose some of the ones that I really liked. I can even delete pack here, and you'll see quite a few other different icons that pop up. We'll go here, and this one again are going to be files that you just drag and drop. So this is the last icon pack that I wanted to show you. This is more of a doodle style icon. Some people will like this because they feel it creates an approachable brand style. If you're shooting for more of a corporate business, professional theme, you may want to avoid some of these hand-drawn icons and stick with something that's very clean and precise, like the other fonts or other icon styles like this one or like these ones. This is going to be more for the playful businesses that want to create something more friendly. Doodle icons like this can be really great if you're selling childcare products or something to the younger audience, or if you're shooting for something like those with ADHD where they need to doodle all the time and they need to stay distracted. Again, it depends on the audience you're targeting and the type of message you want to portray. Icons like this can really enhance that message. Moving on to the next topic, let's discuss photography and videography. Now this one can be a little different, so let's run through a few examples here. If you've got a business that is corporate themed and you want to go with that very sleek, professional, sophisticated look, the photos that you add to your website, the stock content, you're going to want to find individuals in sport coats, suits, blouses, skirts. You want to have that business professional attire. You want it to be office themed. You want the photos to embody and capture the style of content that will help the brand. Now, for those businesses out there that really want to go for that casual look, I love it. You're going to want to select photos of people in a casual environment. You're going to want to find people with regular t-shirts on, regular jeans, maybe some images on their t-shirt. Photos like this are going to push the brand's message forward. But if you put a photo, of course, of somebody in a t-shirt on a business professional website, it's going to subtract from the message. So it's important to set the standards for your photography. Now, the same stuff applies to video. They're one and the same. So when it comes to video content and stock footage, of course, you want to make sure that the content in that video aligns with the brand's message. Last but not least, I know this video has gone long, so I'll keep it short. We want to talk about logos. Now, before we jump into talking about the creation of logos, I want to talk about the mistakes I've made in the past and the mistakes that I've seen other clients of mine make when it comes to their logo. And that's that every logo needs to have 3 different variations. There's your icon, your text, and both icon and text combined. Now, what I mean by this is Nike will have its classic swoosh, but Nike also has a text version of Nike. And then you'll recognize that Nike also will have the swoosh with Nike below it. Spotify is another great example of both the icon and the text Spotify below it. Apple, same thing. You've got your Apple icon, or it'll say Apple, or it'll have both the Apple icon with the bite out of it plus Apple text. So why is it important to have 3 different variations of a logo? Well, let me show you. So here I have my logo on a business card. I actually have 2 different business cards. We'll talk about that in a second. But you can see here, this is my logo with the text on top of it. It works really well, it makes sense, and it fits. That said, here is another sticker option of the logo with both the icon and the text. Now this icon, and I want to hold this up for reference, is a pretty thick icon. The text is really thin, but this icon won't fit on all objects the same way. What do I mean by that? Well, here are pens that I've printed for my business. If you were to print the icon on this pen, and I know it's not super in focus here, but that icon would be so incredibly small on this pen that it would blur together. It wouldn't even make sense. That said, the text of my logo makes sense to put on here. So let's look at another scenario in which the icon makes more sense than the text, and that is chapsticks. If I had the text on top, the text would be so incredibly skinny up right here that it wouldn't even make sense. It would be hardly legible, whereas the icon is very bold and it's very in your face. Now, funny enough, I did actually add the text on the side of this chapstick here because I still wanted the name of the brand to be present, and that can be one of the risky things of just including your icon. And the reason I say that is because the Nike swoosh is globally recognized. your business logo will probably not be globally recognized for the next few years. Now, of course, you can make it big and your logo is all of a sudden globally recognized. That being said, it is in your best interest to always include the name of the business if possible, if you're just going to go with the icon. Once you have the 3 different variations of your logo, now it's time to export that logo into 4 different formats. You've got your PNG, your JPEG, your PDF, and your SVJ file. Now, your PNG is going to be an image where there's no background and it is just the outline of your logo. If there are colors, of course, that are going to show up, but that PNG can be dragged and dropped into multiple areas like your business card, or it can be dropped onto your website. And because there's no background, it's not going to have some weird ugly square or circle behind the logo that's taking away or subtracting from the image that you're putting it on. Now, for the JPEG and the PDF files, they will have a background. And you're going to use those files for letterheads, for your service agreements, maybe even for the top left of your website if you've got a white or black background that you're using for your website. This is where the color of the background is going to blend in and you don't need to worry about having an image without a background. Now, the last file is arguably one of the more important files that you absolutely need. So if you go out and you use a creative designer to create that logo, you need to request this file from them, and that is the SVJ file. An SVJ file is considered a vector file, and what I mean by that is that there are no pixels when it comes to creating that image. And it sounds a little weird, but you could reasonably, for eternity, continue to zoom in onto the logo and you will never end on a specific pixel. Now, the benefit and the value that comes with the SVJ file is being able to expand the logo onto large print media without any sort of distortion or pixelation. So I have a few examples here that I want to show you. I'm going to push my microwave, throw on a lav mic, and show you where I've used my SVJ files for my logo. So the first product that I want to show you is a table runner. I do a lot of events, and if you're somebody who also goes to a lot of events, you're likely going to want to invest into one of these. You can get them for anywhere between $50 to $100, but in this case, you need that SVJ file because when you print that table runner, you're going to ultimately print your logo in a very large format. Let me bring it up higher. You can see here this logo is as big as my torso. And if I didn't have an SVJ file, this section would start to get pixelated and distorted. So let me take this, set it to the side, and grab one more item to show you. As I mentioned, I do a lot of events, so another area in which you're going to want to have an SVJ file is when you do print media and create banners for your business. And in this case, I have this example. I would extend it all the way, but unfortunately it's out of the screen. So you can see here, I've got the logo on this side. And if I did not have an SVJ file, this logo would ultimately look blurry. I do not have the logo anywhere at the bottom, but each of the icons and elements on this banner are SVJ files so that they can be expanded without pixelation. Now, I know it's silly, but I wanted to show you just a few more things that I've used my logo on, in which case I have used my SVJ file because it's easy, and a lot of printing companies and businesses out there will require that or ask for that over a PNG or JPEG because they don't want to print something and have the slightest little pixelation cause problems. So the first example here that I have is that I printed water bottles with my logo. In this case, when I got these printed, they did ask for my SVJ file, and they only wanted an SVJ file because of the fine print here of the text. They wanted to make sure that the text wasn't going to be merging together. Now, the other thing that I always think is hilarious to show are these little M&Ms. You can actually go to the M&M website and get your logo printed, or literally a picture of your face printed on an M&M. And let me see if I can focus on the M&M here. Okay, so I focused it on the M&M, and you can see my little horse image is on the little M&Ms. This is where the text would not make sense at all, but the little icons are fun to look at. This is a fun little product to give away after you've finished your services with them, and it's definitely something to remember because they can literally eat your logo. Now, one more thing I wanted to show you that I've used an SVJ file for is 3D printing. It's a tax write-off for me to be able to print products for my business, and in this case, I've taken my logo and 3D printed it. This is just a little stand that I use at the tables when I run events, but If I were to take my logo, which is 3 inches by 3 inches when I designed it originally, and blew it up to what is now roughly probably 9 inches by 5 or 6 inches wide, the logo would then again be distorted by pixels. And this is definitely one of those areas that I needed to use an SVG file for. Okay, we've talked about the logo itself and how we want to present the logo and the type of formats they want to export it in. The real question you're probably asking now is, where do I get a logo? Well, there are multiple options out there. First and foremost, House of Strategies, we have a creative team. We can build that logo for you, and we will follow the exact requirements and elements that we've talked about in this module. We'll build an icon version, a text version, and a combination version. We also give you different variations of the color combination, so you can give us your business colors. We'll obviously create the logo based off of those colors, and then we'll create a white version and a black version so that you can use those in different areas as well. Alternatively, if you want to go to Upwork, that's a great place where I recommend going and finding a logo. You can get a logo created for you as cheap as $20, upwards of $300, $400, or $500. Now, some people like to value price their logo builds and their creative design. So as crazy as it sounds, you can go to some agencies where they will charge upwards of $40,000 or $50,000 for a logo. Because again, like I said, they value price the logo. They know that you're going to use your logo through all sorts of different elements. And so they look at that and say, well, because you're going to use it so often, we're going to charge X amount for it. So it can be a little risky. You just need to go get price options out there. Now, other areas that you can get your logo, go to ChatGPT. You can tell it to create a logo. I don't recommend that. You're not going to get the same formats out of it, and it's going to be clearly AI based. But if you're wanting to just move past this section and quickly get something out there, you can. Canva is another great option to go online and create your own. But unless you pay for it, you're not going to be able to export all of the types of files that I recommended in the formats. There are plenty of different platforms like Adobe out there that will also help you create logos. The options are endless. Ultimately, there are all sorts of different options out there. What I do recommend is finding somebody that you can work with individually, one-on-one, where they will work with you to take your brand message, your brand vision and values, and to embody that style and that design into a logo for you. Your logo is going to be printed everywhere, and you're going to carry it everywhere. It's going to be on your shirts. It's going to be on your business cards. It's going to be stickers. It's going to be on your website. You want to make sure that that logo embodies your vision and the vision for the business itself. If it doesn't, you're going to want to reevaluate the type of logo you created. In conclusion, I know this module has been long, but it's incredibly important because it is your brand, it is your design, and it is your style. What you need to do now is open a Google document or a Word document, or you can ultimately do this on paper, but I'd recommend at least having a digital version of it. But you're going to want to copy and paste all of those hex codes that you selected for your color palette. You're going to want to transfer over the fonts and document the type of fonts you want to use for your header and body. You're going to want to document the types of icons you want to use for your business. And the same goes for your photography and videography. For your logo, that can almost be a completely separate page in your brand guideline book, but it's important to establish when and where to use the logo, when to use the text version, when to use the icon version, when to use the combination version. This is going to go into that book at the end of the entire course, Build to Market, that you can reference back and forth to in order to keep your business within the guidelines that you set.